All right, guys, sports video games existed before NBA Jam, but what made this game so successful, not just in the culture, but also financially, Alex?
I mean, I think it was a bunch of things. The main thing is that it was just very loud and very in your face in a way that video games really weren't at the time, especially sports video games. It had a lot to do with that. It had a lot to do with the fact that also that this was the first game that licensed official NBA players and teams and everything.
Okay, but one very famous player, Dan, missing from this game, Michael Jordan, not a part of NBA Jam. Now, if a game was created today, NBA 2K, without LeBron in it, it would kill the credibility of the game. Why did not having MJ in this game not matter?
I think it was able to withstand that because, like Alex said, it was so novel to have all the other players in the game. MJ had the opt-out clause. He was not in things licensed by the NBA and the Players Union. So I think just seeing anyone else in the game and all these real players was kind of able to make up for it, whereas now that's such a given expectation of games that they're all licensed, that everyone's in there, that missing LeBron would be kind of killer.
Now, there are a lot of players in the game, but we all know John Stockton didn't fly through the air. So how exactly did Midway, who developed the game, make the decision to go outlandish and you know, like over the top rather than realistic? How did realistic get rejected?
I mean, we talked to all the developers. We kind of split them up between the two of us, and we never really got a totally clear answer on exactly how it happened. But it was kind of the brainchild of Mark Trammell to take these, you know, what were at the time very normal looking dunks when they were first starting to develop the game, a very realistic gameplay. And at some point, you talk to Mark Trammell, you can talk more about this, it just became much bigger and you know, you had the flames, you had the really high jumps and everything.
Yeah, I think it developed a little bit organically. Like they started, you know, you're spending all day messing around with the game and trying to develop things, and he started just making the dunks go a little bit higher and a little bit farther and a little bit crazier. And within the studio, they started reacting to that very positively, and so they just kept going further and further in that direction until, you know, something really crazy happened.
The reaction wasn't entirely positive. I talked to one developer that was just like, he got into the developing of the game because he really liked the NBA and he liked the NBA players for what they were and what they could do. So once he saw that, he was just like, no, this is ridiculous. Like, we're not going to almost insult the players in this way by having them do these crazy things. I'm totally against this. No. And of course, now that's like the biggest thing. Eventually, obviously, he came around.
You mentioned Mark Trammell, one of the developers. He has a hidden character in the game. I know they put some of their fan affiliations in the game. What were some of the behind-the-scenes quirks that you guys found interesting?
Well, that was one of the things. Was Mark Trammell is from Michigan, and he's a Pistons fan, and the Pistons and Bulls were big rivals at the time. And the Midway was based in Chicago, and so he was always hearing it from Bulls fans, and this is right as the Bulls were breaking through. So he put a script in the game where if it was a close game between the Pistons and Bulls, the Bulls stats would go way down and they would shoot terribly and the Pistons would do really well.
It's like an anti-clutch
exactly, yeah.
kind of code.
Yeah, so he said at the time no one really noticed it, but it's one of those things that I think had been kind of rumored throughout the year. So it was interesting to hear the kind of real story from him.
It's really interesting. And some of the business side of this, I mean, the impact that this game had on future sports games, Alex, what was it?
I mean, it was huge. Obviously, it was big business. It was making a ton of money. But also just in the gameplay of sports games, I was surprised to learn that I believe this was one of the first games where you had individual skill ratings for players that were visible to the player as you're selecting like which team you want to do. So you know that John Stockton has a really high steal ability, but maybe less of a dunk ability. Whereas Karl Malone, you know, their balance was perfectly reflected in their stats, and that was the case for all of the teams in NBA.